Okay, so today I will be focusing on two American values and applying them to one of my favorite movies that actually takes place in France. And it's about three American women and they're kind of separate yet one journey all together, which leads me to my first point of individualism in American society. In Monte Carlo, individualism is very present as the main character and her sister live totally separate lives, even though that they are part of the same family. One, they're very not family oriented and kind of live separate lives in general. And that's a big part of that. And I do agree with Cole's description of the values Americans live by, because as a culture, we view each of us as very unique, and grouping us together is not something we like, just as the sisters in the movie don't like being compared to each other or being seen as similar. People think that being in a group, they're not tied to that identity, and we take a lot of pride in doing things alone and being a standout. And the sister in the movie, her mother passed away, and she prides herself on healing alone, doing things alone, not taking any help or kind of slowing down and doing that sense. And privacy is glorified for most, and if you're always around people, that would mean desperation or lack of confidence in a sense. And I think as the movie depicts the women they're kind of growing up and they're at that stage of changing and like adulthood. This applies to Americans because we're taught as we get older to let go of our support and do things on our own, and having independence is highly sought after as you grow up. You want the freedom of being alone, you want to go anywhere, do anything with anyone. And the main character wanted to just go with her best friend to Paris, but the parents thought they weren't responsible enough, so they were like really upset when they invited her stepsister, and they were just all really mad that they had to do things as a group collectively. And I know my friends and I always wanted to go places or the city of Chicago when we were younger because we wanted independence, and I always wanted to do things alone because it's viewed as like cool and confident, and most people enjoy some alone time. And the only person that I know that is like always likes to be around people does get backlash for that, and it's almost seen as a little bit desperate, like you want to be around people or you can't do things on your own in that sense. I think the values might be different in my host city because Italians are very much a little bit more community and family oriented than us. They have independence and self-sufficiency, but they still have very strong relationships and responsibility and ties to their community and family. And I think the differences might cause me to be a bit frustrated at a slower lifestyle and find it odd to kind of depend on others, but I think it's a great chance to grow. And then shedding some light on my second value, which is future orientation, which I thought was super interesting. I do agree with Cole's description of future orientation because we assume everything is kind of better in the future, even if you're in the greatest moment of all time. I know that the main character in the movie Monte Carlo, she is so excited to go to Paris because she's lived in Texas her whole life and just been kind of in that place. And she said she's been getting through all football games and pep rallies for the past 4 years just to go to Paris, even though that was probably a great time in her life, and now she's finally like having the opportunity in the present to go. She's still just discounting her past and present accomplishments and thinking in a future-oriented sense. And I think in our kind of value system and Cole's kind of way of doing it, like we assume everything's better in the future, and we take for granted the present and past accomplishments, hoping we'll do better in the future. But I think it is good to be hopeful, but it takes away a lot of joy in place of just hope for that. And as the gals in the movie embark on their trip, they have a very strict schedule, and they get lost from their bus tour, which inevitably makes them extremely upset. They could never see it as like a positive value as people in other countries or societies view it. And their future plans, they lost control of their future plans, which we highly value, like a strict schedule and having things laid out for us so we can have that kind of control. And each of the three women are on separate movies in the journey, but despite being on the trip together, they're just like very separated from each other, and they're kind of doing their own thing, which, they really value that kind of sense of being separate but together. And I do think that the future orientation applies to Americans because we are always valuing, our plans, our schedule, things like that. And I do anticipate that Italians may have a bit more, they might be a little bit more present on things, not, rushed to do things like Americans. And I think I'll have to slow down and kind of get used to the lifestyle, although Americans are still like very independent. I think it'll just be a little bit tough to kind of navigate that in my host country, but I think it'll be a great chance to grow with everything. And I just thought that movie was a great show of, placing three women that are on this together and, thinking about the future, but then their plans kind of unravel and they have to live in the moment and be like very present with each other and bond. And I feel like it showcases how we can still have our values, but we can change and grow and experience things in other cultures and appreciate that.